So welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us on this very warm day for this Lunch and Learn session. My name's Claire. I'm the Networks and Events Officer here at Voluntary Norfolk. I've got some of my colleagues on the call this morning, so I can see my colleague also called Claire. Other names are available at Voluntary Norfolk. And then my colleague Laura and my colleague Nikki also on the call this morning. Hopefully, we're all going to learn a lot this morning, and hopefully the tech is going to behave itself as well. I have practiced sharing the presentations, but please do be patient with us. So I'm delighted to welcome onto the call both Sandra from Investing in Volunteers, who's going to tell us a bit more about the accreditation, the process, so on and so forth, and then Joe and Lauren from Feathers Futures in nice, cool Great Yarmouth, not jealous in the slightest, who are going to talk us through their experience of the process as well. And then hopefully we'll have a bit of time at the end of the session for questions. If you have a question that comes up during the presentations, if you want to pop it in the chat, and we'll go back to it at the end. And both Sandra and Joe and Lauren have said that I can send out the copies of the presentations afterwards. So I know it's useful to know, so you don't have to be making loads of notes if you don't want to. So without further ado, I will hand over to Sandra, and I will just stop talking for a minute so that I can concentrate on sharing your slides, Sandra.
No problem. Thanks very much, Claire, and good afternoon, everybody. It's lovely to be with you. I'm sitting in Northern Ireland, actually, and we're not just as hot as you, but yeah, it's hot for us. So yeah, I can appreciate where you're all coming from, and I think it's great that you've turned up today to do this webinar. When I do these sessions, I quite often start, I start by doing two things. The first one is I ask the question, are you investing in volunteers? And the second thing I ask is for participants just very quickly in the chat to type one word that you feel describes your volunteers or the difference that they make to your organisation. So if you wouldn't mind humouring me a little bit and just thinking for a minute of one word that comes to mind when you think of your volunteers. Okay, so we have things like diverse, crucial, essential, support, life-saving, essentials in there quite a few times, vital, transformative. Stability. More seconds, anybody else? Everything? One more. Skillful. Okay, so already what you've told me is that your volunteers mean a lot to you, and some very powerful words coming there. So back to my original question, are you investing in your volunteers? And I suppose what I want you to think about is that, you know, why, if volunteers are these really, really powerful words, why then are you not investing in volunteers, or how indeed are you investing in volunteers? And some of the reasons as to why we should invest in good practice for volunteer involvement is, you know, some of the things that come to mind is volunteers give a gift of time. So why don't you then give something back to them? And good practice involving them well is something that you can do to give back to them. They make a huge contribution to your organisation. You can go back one, Claire, just to really
sorry, apologies.
Just stick with the first one. Yeah, I'm on a bit of a introduction ramble, but just in terms of setting the scene, I want you to think about how volunteers make a huge contribution to your organisation. So is it not good to recognise this and to give something back and show them how they're valued? They represent your organisation, so what they do needs to be good, good quality. Therefore, they need to be recruited, trained and supported well. Everybody talks about risk management these days. So yes, it needs to be about investing in your volunteers so as everybody is kept safe. And again, and these are just a few things, because you can think yourselves of why you should invest in your volunteers. But if volunteers have a positive volunteer experience, what I always find is they're motivated to stay longer, and they actually tell other people to volunteer with you. So again, that's just a bit of a preamble to thinking about investing in volunteers. And again, yes, it's a play on words, because I do want to introduce you to investing in volunteers, or IIV as it's known, as a quality standard. It's a national quality standard for the involvement of volunteers. We call it the industry standard. And first and foremost, and I will probably say this several times before I stop talking this afternoon, its purpose is to improve the volunteer's experience when volunteering. It's not about, a tick box exercise. It's not about making organisations jump through hoops. This is about improving volunteers' experiences. These people that you said were transformative, that they were vital, they were essential. It's about improving their experience. It's governed by the UKVF, who are the awarding body. UKVF are the 4 volunteering infrastructure organisations across the UK. So you have Volunteer Scotland, Volunteer Now, NCVO and WCVA own and govern the standard. The standard is made up of 6 quality areas, which we'll look at in a moment, which describe best practice for working with volunteers. And that's what we're getting at today, that the quality standard, by engaging in good practice, by meeting standards, you are investing in your volunteers and showing them that they matter. I will also emphasise that the standard is basically a framework where you can benchmark your practice. It is freely available on the Investing in Volunteers website. And again, I'll give you addresses at the end. But the framework is there that you can use, and it costs you nothing. And you can just use that as a benchmark, as a tool to help you guide your practice. However, we also offer a 12-month supportive development journey, which leads to an externally verified award. And that is where, and again, I'll go through the process very quickly in a few moments, but that is where you can get recognition for investing in volunteers. You can get recognition for putting good practice in place, but you can also get the help, the support to get that practice in place with a mentor, with an assessor by your side. So what is the standard about? Next slide, please, Claire. So this particular slide just covers the 6 quality areas of investing in volunteers. And under each of those quality areas, within each of those quality areas, there are a number of practices which are just indicators of what we feel are basic good volunteer management practice. Now, if I just take a minute, and if people are willing to engage with me, if anybody wants to shout out, under vision for volunteering, what do you think you might find? What sort of practice do you think would be good, considered good practice under vision for volunteering? Please just shout out if you can. He's all too shy.
Is including it in service plans and,
Absolutely.
things that's very strategic documents.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Go on ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Include them in our strategy.
Absolutely.
And how we're going to develop the services, because they are an integral part.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what that quality area is about. It's about making sure that volunteering is embedded within the overall vision, values, culture and aims of the organisation, and that its impact is recognised and communicated, and that everybody understands why you're involving volunteers. So there's 4 practices under that one. Planning for volunteers, quality area 2. Does somebody want to shout out something that you might expect to see good practice under planning for volunteers?
Would that be like a target number of volunteers that you're aiming to recruit, possibly?
Yeah, it's about thinking ahead in terms of the people, the policies and procedures. It's a sort of 3 Ps one. Thinking of all the things that need to be put in place to ensure that volunteering is well managed. So yes, it's about thinking ahead and thinking, right, what do I need? And how am I going to get it? And it's about making sure that the systems are in place, whether it's about risk, which we mentioned earlier, safeguarding, health and well-being, it's problem solving, it's all those sorts of things, making sure that they are in place before volunteers actually join you. Number 3, volunteer inclusion. Again, no surprises there. What would you expect? Anybody?
Basically including volunteers in meetings, maybe some decision making. I mean, hopefully in our organisation, you wouldn't necessarily know who a volunteer was and a member of staff in certain circumstances.
Okay, yeah. So it's as it says on the tin, it is about inclusion, but it's made within this. There's 4 practices which are all about making sure there's a positive approach to inclusion, equity, and diversity, and that there's a proactive approach to making volunteering accessible. So that's thinking through different things that you might do within when you're thinking about the recruitment, and just making sure that the roles that you develop and identify are actually accessible by volunteers. Okay, number 4 is about recruiting and welcoming volunteers. Again, it's what it says on the tin, but does anybody want to shout out anything that they think might come under that? Too shy.
Sort of part of the recruitment process from start to finish, or?
Absolutely. It's about, there's 4 practices, and it's really about making sure that it's easy for people to find out about opportunities and to explore whether they are right for them and get involved. So you're right, it covers all the sorts of things about recruiting and also the sort of induction and training, that whole welcoming of volunteers to make sure that they are completely settled within the role. Called Area 5 covers the whole area of supporting volunteers. So again, that volunteers feel supported at all times, that they're a part of the organisation, that their contribution makes a difference. So again, no surprises there. It's about how you're actually working alongside the volunteers and making sure they feel supported. In Quality Area 6, valuing and developing volunteers. Anybody think what might be under that one?
We train hours, so whilst they're volunteering, they're gaining accreditations.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what that one's about. That whole area, the whole value is so important. So making sure that volunteers are valued and that they feel valued, and that there are opportunities for volunteers to develop and grow through their experience, and that could be through training and recognition through that, but also that their contribution, that they feel their contribution is meaningful and rewarding, and that any future aspirations that they might have are supported within that. So that is a bit of a nutshell around the actual framework for the standard. So there's 29 practices within those 6 quality areas. But I don't think there would be any surprises there. And please do go to the website and have a look through the framework. Download it, have it on your desk beside you, where you can see and think about how you are investing in your volunteers. Next slide, Claire. If you want to go for accreditation, and as I say, the framework is there for you to just use. So please, I'm not on a marketing mission today. It's about making sure that you improve volunteers' experiences. And the process to accreditation means that you get recognition for doing it. We talk about a supported journey in IIV. It's not like maybe other quality marks whereby the assessor comes in at the end and tick, tick, tick and goes through and puts you under a lot of pressure or whatever. Well, actually, Lauren and Joe can tell us later whether that was the case or not, because they're an achiever and they're going to tell us about actually going through the process. But we believe that what we have developed is a supported journey, because the assessor is appointed right at the start and literally holds your hand through the whole process. So first of all, they will meet with key people who are working alongside volunteers, and also some volunteers themselves, and hopefully a trustee and your CEO as well, to get everybody involved in the process. And the assessor will literally walk through that process with you and explain every step of it, and they will go into a wee bit more detail about the 6 quality areas that I have just literally raced through there now. Once the introductory workshop is done, you will have the opportunity to go away and self-assess yourself against the practices. And literally that is just a benchmarking exercise. You will think about the practices. It's that opportunity to reflect on what you're doing, to take the opportunity to look at some of those practices and say, yeah, I actually think I am doing that, or, you know, I'm maybe doing a wee bit of that, but I'm not doing it, or I'm not doing it for all volunteer roles, or actually, no, I'm not doing it at all. And right from the start, what we say is be honest. It's fine if you literally, you know, have loads of gaps, because this is the purpose of the journey, to help bring you up the standard. The assessor will give you feedback, both verbal and written, on that self-assessment exercise. They will look at 3 pieces of written evidence at that stage. So if you have a volunteer policy or an induction checklist or a role description, anything like that, they will look at that and give you feedback on that to help you get things in place. As a result of that exercise, you will develop an improving practice plan. Basically, it's just a to-do list. It's the sort of things that you need to do as a result of having gone through that benchmarking exercise, the things you need to do to bring your standard, your practice up to standard. Again, the assessor will keep you right, making sure that you've pulled out the right things into your to-do list, and they will signpost you to sorts of resources that you might need. So if you need to, you know, create a new induction checklist or something like that, there's templates, there's loads of stuff available which will help you to do that. And only when you're ready will the assessor work with you to arrange the assessment. So obviously within reason, we try to keep from step 1 to step 6, we do try to keep it within the year, but it's about giving you the time to get your house in order. The assessment at step 4 is very much about talking to volunteers, hearing volunteers' voices, hearing what they have to say about their experience. So most of the interviews, or we like to call them conversations, will be held with volunteers, but we will also talk to a number of staff as part of that, to hear again how you are investing in volunteers. As a result of the assessment process, there will be a report written, and the report aims to try and give you something that will show you how you're meeting the standard, but also help you look at where your strengths are, and if there's other areas that maybe you could develop further in the next 3 years, because accreditation lasts for 3 years, and there's the option at the end of accreditation to renew it. Once you have, there's a quality assurance process that we go through here in relation to the report that the assessor does. But once that's been through the quality assurance process, then we're ready for a party, because step 5 is about achieving and celebrating and making sure that you tell everybody how much you value your volunteers, and you value them so much that you have went through the Investing in Volunteers accreditation process to show them how much you care. Step 6 is really just where we encourage organisations that once you have the practice, once you've got everything in place, do everything in your power to try and keep that, to actually continually go through that cycle of continuous development and improving, and hopefully then renew the award at the end of the 3-year cycle. Now, I'll just say very quickly, there is a cost to accreditation, as most of you probably would expect, and it's based on the number of volunteers that you have and the number of sites, roles, things like that. There's a sampling process that we go through in terms of knowing how many people we need to speak to, which tells us how much time our assessors will need to spend with you, and costs start at £1,800 plus VAT. Okay, and again, depends on how many volunteers you have. There is a process. If you just click on to the next slide, Claire, and yeah, we're going to hear from Feathers Futures. Go to the next one, then it means you just don't have to put my slides back up again. When you get the slides, you'll see you can go on to the website. First of all, download the standard. It's there, and please use it. But if you're going for accreditation, do go to the website and get a quote. It costs nothing to get a quote, and at least it will show you, with your particular tailored circumstances, you will get a quote that will tell you what you would be up against if you were to go for that. So back a slide. I can sit here all day and tell you loads of benefits, but it's far better to hear from an organisation that's been through the process. It's better to hear what they think of the process, and in actual fact, maybe what investing in volunteers means to them as being an achiever. So we're delighted that Lauren and Joe from Feathers Futures are going to talk to you a little bit more about what that is.
Thank you, Sandra. Thank you. And apologies for the slight tech issues there. Once I got the hang of it, it was all okay. I think a really informative presentation. So without further ado, I will attempt to share Joe and Lauren's presentation and welcome them as well. Bear with.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandra, for doing all that. It's been really helpful to put it in perspective. Sandra, please do chip in as well if there's anything that you think we're missing from what we're going to say in our presentation. So.
Sorry.
That's all right. I can make a start anyway. So the first bit, we can go straight on to the next slide. That's just a starting one. So a bit of background from us, really, for anyone that doesn't know. We are a women's centre and we are based only in the borough of Great Yarmouth. So we're in the town centre. We've been here since 2018 and we have an open door policy all week to any women that live within the borough. So women can just come and access support. We have an in-house cafe, we do specialist courses, activities, groups that reduce loneliness and isolation, through to domestic abuse recovery, through to probation being based in the building 3 days a week, and working with women involved in the criminal justice system. We have a toiletries bank, all sorts of things going on. But actually what we found at the beginning, we were really quite small, very small, and it's grown through word of mouth and developed. But what we found very early on was that women who had come to access support here then wanted to give back. So very quickly, we had ladies who had started just doing general things like making coffee, coming and helping, sorting donations. And initially, we had no real structure for that. We were just pleased that people wanted to be part of this kind of very small community organisation that we had set up. But as we grew and developed into what we are today, we really realised that actually we needed to have much more structure for that, which is why we kind of started looking at the investing in volunteering. So if you go on to the next slide, Claire, please. So this kind of just give a flavour of the volunteers that we have within the centre now. So and what we started having. So almost all of our volunteers have lived experience and have come through for support first. So they complete their programme of support and then they can go on to volunteer with us. And we offer a peer mentoring accreditation, so they can do an OCN level 3 in peer mentoring women qualification. That means that they could go out into the community and support women with health appointments or accessing other services initially that maybe they wouldn't do on their own. We have volunteer counsellors, both training and qualified. We have the toiletries bank that's very busy every day, and that's open to the whole community, not just women coming. So as you can imagine, that's well used. We have health champions that encourage women to go for their smear tests and have done specific health training. We have the reception and welcoming women. We have our in-house little cafe kitchen area where women can come and have a cuppa each day. Volunteers help with the groups and activities, and then of course getting out and about in the community, fundraising and attending events. That's just kind of a few of the things that the volunteers do at the moment within our centre. Next slide, please. Yeah, so why we started it, we looked at it for a while actually before we started the accreditation, because like I said, we knew that we had had volunteers from day one, and we knew that we were learning that process as we went along, what worked for the volunteers, what they were doing, how we could support them. But when we went from sort of having 2 or 3 volunteers to having more volunteers, we needed to make sure that we were getting that right. And we were very conscious that we wanted to make sure that we were providing the right support for those volunteers, firstly, while they were with us, so that it was a two-way process and they were getting skills, opportunities, and that we were getting that right. But also, because we had a responsibility to the women then coming new through the door, that they were getting a really good support as well. So we spoke to the trustees, and we really wanted to kind of look at how we could, just do everything that kind of Sandra said within the process. So volunteering wasn't just an add-on, it has then been put into our strategic plan. And we were really clear that we wanted, we could see that volunteers were really benefiting from being here. They were going on to other things, they were going on to employment, or it was really improving their outcomes. So we knew that it wasn't something that we wanted to just be an add-on. We wanted it to be absolutely part of our core offer of everything that we do here. So we knew that we needed to, like it says, future-proof volunteering as we grow. We wanted to make sure we were getting it right. And we wanted to make sure that our volunteers were being valued and supported. And so we felt that the investing in volunteering was a good way to go about that. Next slide. So yeah, right from the beginning, the trustees were involved in it. I was involved. We had a look at what the best way to review our volunteering process was. And we embedded it within our strategic plan. We are a really small organisation with not a lot of income. And so actually investing in this, not knowing the process, and also not knowing anyone locally who had been through this. So where we would have maybe gone to another organisation to find out what was it really like with the assessor, what was these things. We didn't have that to be able to kind of find out. So we had to be really clear that this was a good investment for us. So we budgeted those costs. What we did as well is, as part of this, we budgeted ongoing costs for training and development of volunteers, because it's not just the cost of actually doing the accreditation, it's the staff costs and the time costs to put into that process, along with how are we going to keep that going way beyond the process, like Sandra said about reviewing our practice. That all takes time and investment. So we really wanted to make sure it wasn't something that it never was a tick box exercise for us. It was very much, how can we be confident in our process and how can we make sure that we do that moving forward. And so the trustees were involved in it, the volunteers were involved, and everything was there right from the beginning. Next slide, please. So Lauren's going to talk a bit about the process, because Lauren was our volunteer coordinator at the time. So that was her proper role within Feathers, was just around volunteer coordination. So she was the person who practically did the process and everything.
We
So
worked, it was a year ago, wasn't it? Just practically kind of to the month that we completed it and we were successful. So my memory is from memory. But I really like the process. I'm a very practical, pragmatic person, and I just felt it fitted me how I work anyway. And it's got that formalised structure. As Sandra said, the resources are really quite helpful, really helpful, even if you don't pay to have the accreditation. They're really worthwhile looking at. So initially, we met Anne-Marie, who was our assessor. Again, I know she was always there if I needed her, if I was getting a bit stuck or unsure about something, that I could contact her to help me through the process. I didn't really feel like I needed Anne-Marie because everything was quite, it's quite obvious, some of the things we were doing. So initially, to do the self-assessment, where we had to look at all the quality standards and the 29 practices, I got a little group of trustees, like a little focus group, and myself, a trustee, and a few volunteers, with like a new volunteer and one that had been quite established, and we looked at all the quality standards. And to be honest, going through them, it was really good because we could see that we clearly met some of them, and that was good confidence boost for us. We knew what we were doing on the right path, but it also made us really reflect and think about areas that we know we could do better. And again, there's templates, there's those resources that you can kind of understand, okay, this is the area that we need to focus on more. So after doing that self-assessment, I was quite pleased with what the evidence we did have and the way we were working. However, there was some quite clearly places that we needed to improve, or just slightly add some things to our policies, or add some, I've created new policies specific for volunteers, because I did have to go through all the processes and policies that we do for staff that had volunteers' names on them, because make sure that their role was clear within the organisation. I'm going through, I'm just talking from memory. Help shaped our policies and improvements. Like I say, now we've got separate policies specifically for volunteers that clearly defines their role more around their sort of role within organisation. We also, the policy that we initially had was, compared to other policies, was very poor. Sorry, Joe, but it was it needed, and so now that policy is like the Bible. When new volunteers start, everything that you need to know from being interested in a volunteer role to exiting at the other end is in there. All the expenses that we help pay, all the training, all the support that they get is now within that one policy, which is quite easy to read. As I say, I felt the whole process, I really enjoyed it. It made us, I used to go around with little one-to-ones with some volunteers when it was more specific in an area that they would be working in, and we would talk through how we could improve it and, show that we are evidencing that we're doing it. I really enjoyed that opportunity, to be honest, to have those conversations. Very honest, we had to be honest that some things we could do better. The only stressful, I believe, Sandra, that we found was the actual assessment on the day, because on the day there is that one day that assessor will meet with all the volunteers and the trustees and staff, and our volunteers and staff were very busy, so it was trying to coordinate that. The actual day went really well, but it was the worry about making sure everyone was there. As Joe said, we are a small charity, and our assessor was kind of used to working with slightly bigger ones. So we had to make sure that we had a high percentage of people on that day so we could get the accreditation. But and as I say, trust and volunteers shared honest feedback, and I think that's what we needed. But I would more than happy to talk further about it, because I say I really feel quite passionate about it. We've got this base and foundation now that we're working on, and it will, we've already made different changes and improvements, and we're continuing to do that now. How we could make the experience of volunteers, improve it. So that's me done on that one. Next slide.
So this was just some of the feedback. And like Sandra said, you get a report at the end. That report's been really helpful. The report was really helpful for us to reflect, hear what the volunteers had said about the process and what we'd put in place. But actually that I have pulled bits out of that report and put in further funding bids, because it's really good evidence, independent evidence of things that we're doing. And it's quite a comprehensive report. But what she found was that volunteers played a pivotal role in our service delivery. They were central to our values and culture. We had a really strong lived experience framework and processes embedded through everything we did, and we supported that. And we saw lived experience as a real strength and an asset as part of our organisation. She found that we were inclusive and welcoming to our volunteers, and that our volunteers felt safe, heard and valued. And she said that we had a really strong focus on wellbeing and volunteer development in terms of the training that we offered volunteers and the sort of wellbeing get-togethers and sessions that we do for volunteers to make sure that they are well and able to support other people coming through. So that was really helpful to have that. And like I say, that day was pretty stressful, to be fair. I'm not going to lie about that. But it's because you've worked really hard on something. You've worked hard for a long time putting something together, and you just want it to go well. But yeah, so it's really nice to have that report.
And we got some feedback about some suggestions, advice, how we could improve the experience for everybody. And one of them was to have to try and reach more of ladies that have professional backgrounds. People have more, have those skills and experience already, rather than we embrace the ladies who come through as ladies who have looked for support, because it gives other people hope. So we really do embrace that. But it was again, and we have done that. We've reached out on LinkedIn and other areas to get those ladies, see if they want to. And also the other one, I think it was around communication. And not everyone does emails, volunteers, some don't do emails, some don't do technology. So we've re-looked at that, and the volunteer coordinator now sends out a regular newsletter. She sends up a WhatsApp group to everybody, and we have more volunteer drop-ins. I mean, the support and supervision has always been there, but we have these add-on kind of drop-in for volunteers where they can have a chat and talk to Debbie, our coordinator. So there are a couple of, she only made a few suggestions, but they're ones we have taken on board and kind of gone forward with as well.
Slide. So yeah, the impact for us, we've kept that volunteer coordinator role. That now belongs to Debbie. She works 3 days a week as the volunteer coordinator. So she does 6 weekly or monthly supervisions with each volunteer to look at their sort of support plan, what they're doing, any training or development, are they happy here? That's done on a one-to-one. She also does a monthly drop-in around wellbeing, where volunteers can meet each other, because if they only volunteer on one day or one activity, sometimes they never get to meet the rest of the team. So they're optional, but they're there and they're put in place. And she is their go-to for any worries, concerns, feedback. So that works really well. But it's been easier to fund that post because of having the evidence from the report and what we're doing to keep that post funded. And we wouldn't be able to do what we're doing with volunteers without that post. We definitely have much stronger systems and processes, significantly improved governance and oversight over what we're doing. I do think it's increased the credibility with funders. Like I say, I've been able to use that report and parts of it with funders. And also it's given confidence to all the other staff around our volunteering process. I say all the other staff, there's 8 of us, so they're not a huge team, but actually everyone's confident because there's such a clear process and such a clear system in place, and the volunteers know where they are. It's given everybody much more confidence in how we go forward with volunteering.
We've all got a consistent message, and I think that helps everybody.
Absolutely, and all the paperwork's in a folder, isn't it? Everyone knows where to go. So yeah, next slide. Yeah, so this is just about the impact on the volunteers. It's nothing that Sandra hasn't said before and we haven't said, but yeah, I think they really feel, I think they really enjoyed the process actually, the ones that fed. They did feel that they really had a voice in shaping how it moved forward.
And they can see us putting the actions into plans, actually, putting the plans into actions. They can see it, they can see the changes. And for new volunteers coming in, it's slightly easier for them now because we do an induction now for everybody. So we know that everyone's got that baseline information, where before there's some assumptions maybe made that they know our values, that they know where our policies are. So now we do this, deliver the induction. But they can shadow, but before they become a fully fledged volunteer, everyone has to go through it. So now, again, consistency. We know everyone's been told, they know where to find things. So it just kind of saves that ambiguity, that uncertainty that some people feel. I found anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And they still feedback now, actually, even though the process is finished, they're much more open to helping shape and design things moving forward, aren't they? Or things where they see, which has been really great because that's what we want here. So yeah, next slide, please. And that's it. Any questions?
Brilliant. Well, before we go to questions, just want to say thank you. Can you see the relief that I'm not sharing the presentations anymore? I can actually speak now. Thank you to all of you for your patience with the tech there. I'd love to blame the heat, but I think there's some user error there as well. And thank you to Sandra and also to Joe and Lauren. Really interesting and informative presentations. So yes, we have got some questions I can see. There's a couple in the chat, and also people might have questions that they want to ask as well. I can see Deborah put in the chat, what's your ratio of staff to volunteers?
So our volunteers kind of fluctuate depending on whether they move on to get other jobs and activities, but we have anything up to around 30 to 40 volunteers, but they not necessarily all volunteers that are in here every single week offering support to groups and activities. They could be ones that are ad hoc in terms of training, going out to events and things like that, or counselling. So yeah, and we have 8 staff, all part-time apart from me. And some of those staff started for support, volunteering, and then our staff.
Thank you. I think we've got a hand up. Lee, I can see your hands up.
Thank you. We've just signed up to IIV, so that was really helpful and well done. So I had a couple of questions. So my first one was, who was at that first introductory meeting with your assessor, with Anne-Marie?
It was myself and you and a member of staff.
Yeah.
Did we have a trustee involved in that time? Because our trustees obviously work full time themselves.
I think we didn't have a trustee that could make that initial meeting. I think it was me, you, and another member of staff.
But the trustees aren't involved necessarily in your self-assessment. They involve themselves as feeding into it, but they're not included. That's what Anne-Marie told us when at the time they weren't included as investing in volunteers, the trustees.
Ah, okay. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, I just wondered if
it's a day-to-day operations.
If you had the volunteers at that introductory meeting, but it doesn't sound like you did. You did that as a result. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I think the very first introductory one was just finding out a bit more about meeting the assessor for the first time, finding out how the process went for us and getting our head around it.
Yeah.
But again, I think that maybe we're slightly protective of our volunteers because they come with the lived experience and the support. So I think we tend to gatekeep slightly some activities till we've met people for the first time before we then do that. So that might be just the way we work. It's probably not necessarily the right way, but it's just how we do things. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I think if I can just add there, certainly the introductory workshop is about what works for you.
Okay.
We certainly encourage you to involve as many people as you see fit in that meeting. And again, just because you want ownership, and I suppose what we do there is we're trying to say it shouldn't just be the volunteer coordinator doing all this. Get other people around you. If there's other people that work with volunteers, and yes, if if a trustee or your chair is available, it's good so as they understand and know what you're doing. And certainly if you want to involve volunteers, of course, that's good to keep them included and involved in everything. But, for the reasons you've just described, that's absolutely fine as well. It's what works for you, the organisation, and it's just to kickstart the process so as everybody's on the same page.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you. And then just one more sort of follow-up question, I suppose. With you said I liked your idea about having a volunteer who'd been there a longer time and a new volunteer. Did you sort of identify a couple of volunteers that you thought would be good for that, or did you ask all your volunteers?
Yeah, I probably asked the volunteers, knowing the volunteers quite well, and yes, and then as it got big, as we kind of went through the process, I made sure I spoke to every single volunteer about what we were doing. It's because the ones around inclusion, looking at how we can support the wider community, reach the LGBT plus community. I was speaking to people specific in that community to help me look at how we can improve sort of to get those messages out, really. So looking at images we put around the building and things like that. So yeah, and I really do feel that you can suit it to tailor these things to your organisation.
That's what's coming across.
What works for you,
great.
really.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. I can see, Nikki, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I have. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. And I think it's a fantastic system. And in past life, I went through investing in people when I worked in an arts charity. And I think that self-assessment, but that process we found really useful as well. And that confidence that you feel at the end of it, even if you're a smallish organisation, you can feel you can slightly punch above your weight because you've been really quite thorough in looking at everything. And there may be bigger boys in the room, but actually you're doing it right. And I think that's really important because it's quite easy to feel intimidated alongside bigger, longer established organisations, charities, and think, well, perhaps we're not doing it right. But you've had that external sort of approval, which is brilliant. But I can imagine that a lot of people are deterred because the amount of work involved and staff time in fitting that in, and also the cost is not insignificant. And I wondered if you had to sort of sell it to your trustees, and if they wanted, how were they going to quantify, is this an investment worth making? What are we going to get out at the end of it? Because it might have felt a bit not very tangible outcomes. We're not going to earn more money from it, or we're not going to get more volunteers. So I'm just wondering how you, if that was a bit of a sell, and if so, how you did it, and if you got them on board, if you had to bring them in so that they saw the benefits. Sorry, it's a long question.
No, I think that because we'd had volunteers all the time, and we maybe knew that we did need to improve that process, or as we were growing, we had a year of a real big review with the trustees around where are we now. We had a bit of a stop and pause year, looking at, we'd had this big growth since 2018 to where we were, but actually had all our systems and processes and things we were doing caught up with the organisation and the demand it was meeting. So we had a real reflective year. And so as part of that, we were looking at a lot of things. This was the only thing that we really that year invested in. We then invested the following year in a new case management system, but we had it all planned. They didn't know. I think the concern was, it was for us as a small organisation, it was a big financial investment when we needed to look at reserves, when we knew demand was really coming out of the door. And could that money be better invested in direct support and project delivery? But I think because we'd looked at the processes and what we were going to achieve and how that would future-proof moving forward and growing stronger, better, with less problems in taking on volunteers, less things that we were having to unpick or backtrack because maybe we haven't got a policy, something's happened and we haven't got the policy, or things like that. We were they were on board really well with it, actually. But it was a huge investment in time and for us, for the size that we were. But definitely, I would say it's helped iron out a lot of issues that I could see that we would have had if we hadn't had these in place now.
Yeah. And I know Anne-Marie said it wasn't necessarily paper driven, and it isn't. However, if you haven't got things in place, then it needs to be written down. So there is a lot more paperwork now. However, you know, you read it once, you know where it is, and that's part of the induction. We cover all that in the induction process now.
And I also think for me, like running an organisation and being a founder, you set it up because you want to help people, but I also want to go home and sleep at night. And knowing I've got this in place, this is really great sleep credits for me because I don't have to second guess, have we got a process in place for our volunteers that meets their needs? Yeah, we have, because we've done it. And so for me, I can go home. It doesn't mean there isn't still issues that we worry about, but in terms of an organisation, and it's nice to go home and sleep at night knowing we're doing our best.
Yeah, and reputation is really important, isn't it? And your volunteers spread that. I think they have in a place like Yarmouth, you know, if you've got people who feel really connected with the organisation and part of it and feel you're really thorough, then that is a fantastic ripple effect that goes on, I think, through the conversations that they have.
Definitely. And they're giving up their time to help us. So we want to give back to them, make sure that we are doing absolutely everything we can to support them to move on with training or what they need from that volunteering. And what someone volunteers for is different for each person, isn't it? But we need to make sure that we are delivering for that person what they want to get out of the volunteering, whether it's a stepping stone to employment or confidence, or we've got to get it right. And this really helps us do that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Well done. Fantastic.
Thank you. And thank you for the question as well, Nikki. I think it is really interesting to kind of hear from people who've been through that process, isn't it? Because it can feel quite daunting and overwhelming, but actually to hear the advantages from it is really, really valuable. We've got a couple more minutes if anyone else has a question at all. If you do think of something afterwards, I will send the slides through. I think, Sandra, you had the website links and stuff on your slides. So there's ways you can get in touch. What I am going to do is just pop into the chat. We have a little feedback survey, which literally takes a couple of minutes to complete. I will put it on the follow-up email with the slides as well. But if you could just take a couple of minutes to do that, it just really helps us with knowing what our network wants us to try and put on in future. So it just remains for me to say a huge thank you to Sandra and also to Joe and Lauren for joining us, for sharing all the information, for sharing personal experiences and organisational experiences. And I think also thank you to all of you for attending, because I had hoped that we would get around 15 attendees as an option, as an aspirational attendee list on the hottest day of the year at midday, and we beat that. So really do thank you very much. And if you know somebody who would have liked to have come along to this but wasn't able to, we will be putting the link to this recording up on our YouTube channel within the next couple of weeks. So thank you very much and stay cool.